Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final selection in our Hollywood's Finest Classic Musicals series, Cabaret, from 1972. Directed by Bob Fosse and starring Liza Minnelli, Michael York, and Joel Grey. The music was provided by John Kander and Fred Ebb, and the choreography by Fosse himself. The screenplay was adopted by J. Preston Allen, who, by the way, is a female writer, from John Van Druten's 1951 Broadway play, I Am a Camera, which in turn had been inspired by Christopher Isherwood's 1935 book, The Berlin Stories. Isherwood himself liked the movie, but felt that the film did not adequately address his own gay lifestyle and that Liza Minnelli was too talented to play Sally Bowles. Imagine quibbling about that. Cabaret came along a full 20 years after the first musical in this series, Oklahoma, 1952, breaking ground in American musical theater because it demonstrated that musicals could deal with darker, more serious subject matter that had been thought before, without sacrificing beautiful music and choreography. In other words, it didn't have to be merely a feel-good vehicle. It could be an adult musical. Accordingly, it deals with issues of blurred sexuality, extramarital sex and abortion, and anti-Semitism and the rise of Nazism in pre-World War II Germany. The music in this movie is diegesic, i.e., the only music we hear is what the characters would have heard in the course of their daily lives. All but one of the songs are sung by Sally or the MC on the Kit Kat Club stage. Cabaret did very well, financially and critically, earning 10 Oscar nominations and winning 8, including Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, but not Best Picture. Roger Ebert said Cabaret was no ordinary musical, and that it didn't perpetuate the cliche that musicals have to make you happy. A contemporary Variety critic said the movie was literate, bawdy, sophisticated, cynical, heartwarming, and disturbingly thought-provoking. In 2002, David Bradshaw wrote in The Guardian that Cabaret was the musical for people who hate musicals. It now ranks number 18 on the American Film Institute's list of the 100 best musicals. It earned $4.6 million, doubling the investment of $2.8 million. Cabaret was shot on location primarily in West Berlin, Munich, and Bavaria. Its interiors were filmed at the Bavarian Studios in Grunwald, near Munich. Most of the action takes place in the Kit Kat Club, a dimly lit, smoky, claustrophobic nightclub with a tiny stage, peopled by seedy, shrill performers, and presided over by a lascivious master of ceremonies. All of the main characters are based on real people, except the MC, who was created for the Broadway show. Brian Roberts' character is based on Christopher Isherwood himself, and that of Sally Bowles on an English expatriate living in Berlin at the same time named Jean Ross, with whom Isherwood had a relationship despite his homosexuality. It took a long time to fill Cabaret because of the many close-up shots that were made. The movie employs cross-cutting techniques so viewers can observe contrasting information. Fosse choreographed a scene in the nightclub where the dancers perform a slapdash letterhazen dance, the happy German countryside, on the Cabaret stage, which is cross-cut with scenes of fighting in an alleyway outside the club's doors, where the Nazis are taking over and blood is running in the streets. The producers insisted on limiting some of the references to Jews, but did retain the story of Fritz and Natalie, even including a traditional wedding scene under a chuppah. Joel Grey has no speaking part in the movie, but he appears frequently, both inside and outside the cabaret, singing directly to the audience. Plot summary. Cabaret is set in 1930s Berlin during the period between the two world wars. Much of the action occurs in the Kit Kat Club, presided over by a depraved MC of indeterminate sexuality, played by Joel Grey. A young buttoned-up Cambridge intellectual, Brian Roberts, played by Michael York, arrives seeking to improve his German and meets an American singer-dancer, Sally Bowles, played by Liza Minnelli, who works in the cabaret. Brian is intrigued by Sally, whom he perceives as wild and uninhibited sprite, unlike many of the women he has known before. Together they explore Berlin, fall in love despite Brian's homosexuality. Michael York actually plays him as bisexual, and observing the descent of the city into its pre-World War abyss. Meanwhile, Brian's friend Fritz, who harbors a terrible secret, is smitten by the daughter of a wealthy Jewish department store owner, though the relationship between them is doomed by the anti-Semitism around them. The cabaret continues to belt out its raucous, risque, Teutonic music, loudly proclaiming that everything remains normal and gay as German life outside its doors descends into chaos. Fun facts about the film. Note the use of reflection shots. The opening shot in the railway car shows a reflection of the railway station. Another such shot can be seen in the chrome casing on the headlights of the Count's car. Sally wears iridescent blue-green nail polish before such colors became fashionable, retreating to green as her character evolves. The rise of German nationalism is personified by the brown-shirted teenage boy at the country inn who proudly sings "Tomorrow Belong to Me." This is the only song in the film which is not performed in the Kit Kat Club. In one scene at the cabaret, the dancers morph into Nazi soldiers. The image of the woman with the monocle was inspired by Portrait of a Journalist, Sylvia von Harden, from 1928, by the German expressionist painter Otto Dix. The cabaret dancers use many moves characteristic of Bob Fosse's choreography, e.g. lots of flirty hip movements. Joel Grey worked with a dialect coach to develop his Berlin accent. When Sally Bowles sings Mein Herr, we get the iconic image of Liza Minnelli with the bowler hat, cane, and black halter top, which has become so incredibly famous. The first Nazi appears very early in the film when he enters the Kit Kat Club to raise money for the party. In contrast, we later see the Kit Kat audience is primarily made up of German officers. Sally's song, Maybe This Time, symbolizes her sadness over her relationship with her father. It's this song that brings Sally and Brian together. The female band in the cabaret are actually a real group. The home of the Duke of Altenburg was used for Maximilian's country mansion scene. Marissa Berenson, who played Natalie, was having trouble with her scene where the neighborhood toughs leave her murdered dog on her doorstep. So Fosse sent someone to a butcher shop to procure some bloody meat and had it dropped on the stoop so that when she opened the door, she was actually horrified by what she saw. Fred Ebb, who wrote the Gorilla song, said it came to him in a dream. It elicited some protests in Berlin as being anti-Semitic, but the controversy subsided when it became apparent that both Kander and Ebb and New York producer Harold Prince were all Jewish. Louise Quick played the gorilla and complained that she could not see or breathe inside the gorilla headdress. The lovely photographic montage about what's going on in Sally's mind, about her performances and what she will do about Brian and the baby, occurs when Brian and Sally dream about their future together. On the advice of Vincent Minnelli, Liza Minnelli's film director father, she based her portrait on Sally Bowles on the 30s actress and flapper Louise Brooks, right down to the helmet hairdo and the makeup. Brooks was an aspiring actress and expat in Berlin during that period. Despite criticism to the contrary, Tomorrow Belongs to Me was not a Nazi anthem, but an original song written by Kander and Ebb in German traditional style. It was recorded by a Broadway singer named Mark Lambert. It's not Lambert we see on the screen, but a German extra. 5 songs which had appeared in the Broadway show were cut from this film version, but they are all heard in some form as background. For example, Married is heard playing on the radio in the scene where Sally and Brian discuss marriage. Things to look for: Fosse's sophisticated, sexy choreography, the image of the woman with the monocle, Joel Grey's brilliant, decadent, Oscar-winning performance as the MC, in which he never utters a word of dialogue, Liza's brilliant Oscar-winning performance as Sally Bowles, particularly in her bowler hat, black halter top helmet hairdo, and Louise Brooks makeup. Her maybe this time number, the use of reflection shots, her gaudy blue iridescent nail polish, the Tomorrow Belongs to Me number, the female band in the Kit Kat Club, Maximilian's country mansion. Listen for Married playing on the radio in the background of the scene where Sally and Brian discuss their marriage. Now it's time to view Cabaret. Sit back, settle down. Please remember, it may take a few minutes for the film to roll. Enjoy.